Greetings, everyone. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to speak on such an important topic, one that has a real impact on our communities. This topic is how to divorce-proof your marriage, or how to prevent divorce in your marriage. Let's start with a striking statistic. Did you know that as of 2022, divorce rates vary significantly across ethnic groups in the US? Here is the breakdown. The Black divorce rate is the highest at 30.8 per 1,000 people. Next is the Hispanic divorce rate at 18.5. The white divorce rate is lower at 15.1. And the lowest, Asians, with a divorce rate of 12.4. But here's what really caught my attention. Indian Americans within the Asian category stand out even more. They have one of the lowest divorce rates among all ethnic groups in the US. That mirrors what we see in India, where only about 1% of marriages end in divorce. So, what's behind this in Indian culture? In Indian culture, marriage is deeply valued. Religious and cultural beliefs play a big role, and historically, divorce has carried a significant stigma. And this creates intense social pressure to stay married, sometimes at any cost. Yet, this low divorce rate doesn't necessarily mean a higher rate of marital happiness. Tragically, data from India's National Crime Records Bureau reveals a heartbreaking reality. Many in unhappy marriages, particularly women, are choosing death over divorce. Suicide rates linked to marriage-related issues remain disturbingly high, with women losing their lives at a higher rate than men. And perhaps this discussion isn't just about how to divorce-proof a marriage or prevent divorce among Indian couples. It is also about how to stay alive through your marriage. So these statistics compel us to dig deeper, not just into the numbers, but into the human stories they represent. What do these trends reveal about cultural values, societal pressures, and the evolving concept of marriage? And more importantly, how can we build God-centered, healthier, and more fulfilling relationships in a world where the weight of tradition often collides with modern and postmodern ideas of what marriage should look like? The power of marriage, what does it mean? At its core, marriage is not just a contract or a social arrangement. It is a covenant. It is a sacred bond designed by God to reflect His unchanging love and faithfulness to His people. And that is the foundation of its power. According to McGoldrick and her colleagues, who have written a powerful book on family life cycle, marriage formation or couple formation is defined this way. When two single adults commit themselves to the establishment of a new system, a marital system, and negotiate relationships with family and friends to reflect that new system, they are seen as a new couple. When two single adults come together in marriage, it is a moment of profound significance. As described in the very first book of the Bible, Genesis, this union is between a man and a woman, two unique individuals. Each of them brings their own identity, their own experiences, and most importantly, their own soul. This means there are two distinct souls in this covenant, the husband's soul and the wife's soul. So when a man and a woman come together in marriage, something remarkable happens. As Genesis tells us, the two shall become one flesh. This isn't just about physical union. It is a whole life union, a complete mingling of body, mind, and soul. Yet, as they come together, they remain distinct individuals. They bring their own unique stories, cultures, and experiences into the relationship, and those don't disappear. Instead, God takes those differences and forms something entirely new, a relational soul. This relational soul is the essence of the marriage itself. It's not static, it is dynamic. It grows and changes as the couple grows and changes. It is the space where two distinct lives don't just coexist, but merge into something greater without losing themselves. John Gottman, a renowned marriage therapist, calls it a shared culture. The couples create a shared culture. But we know it's more than that. This shared culture reflects the creative power of God as He brings unity out of diversity, not erasing individuality, but harmonizing it in love. And when a couple begins a family, this shared culture expands. It becomes a family soul, a new system that carries the values, traditions, and faith of that union. This family soul exists for God's glory. It is a reflection of God's covenant love. In Ephesians 5, Paul tells us that marriage is a profound mystery because it refers to Christ and the church. Marriage is a living picture of the gospel, a reflection of Christ's sacrificial love and the church's loving submission. Think about that for a moment. Your marriage is not just about your happiness or even your family. It's about God's glory. It is about pointing to the ultimate marriage, the one between Christ and His people. The Bible begins with a marriage as Adam and Eve are joined together in the garden, and it ends with a marriage, the wedding feast of the Lamb in Revelation. Your marriage, my marriage, every marriage is meant to reflect that cosmic wedding feast. So, if marriage is designed to reflect something so cosmic, so eternal, how seriously should we take it? How intentional must we be about nurturing and protecting this covenant? It is not enough to avoid or prevent divorce. Marriage is a call to create a relationship that glorifies God, serves others, and points the world to the ultimate union we all long for, the union between Christ and His bride. Now, as we step into this discussion about preventing divorce, or in other words, keeping us alive through a marriage, we must acknowledge a sobering reality. Are there divorces that are not preventable? My answer is yes. And this grieves us, but it should not surprise us. We live in a fallen and broken world. Sin and its effects are everywhere. And while we are called to be faithful, we are not able to change others, including our spouses. Only God can transform the heart. There are situations where the brokenness of this world feels unbearable. Untreated mental illnesses like severe personality disorders or psychosis, the devastation of unfaithfulness, the destruction caused by substance abuse, or the agony of abuse. These are tragic reminders that sin corrupts even the most sacred of human relationships. But hear this. While there are divorces that cannot be prevented, there are also many relationships that can flourish. There are many divorces that can be prevented. By God's grace, we are not without hope. So, how can we divorce-proof our marriages? As a counselor, I take a preventive stance in my therapeutic practice and teach resilience tools for individuals and couples. And we focus on the positive rather than the negative and call it how to build resilience in marriage. There are ways, tools even, to cultivate a union that honors God and withstands the pressures of a broken world. In the time we have together, I want to share 3 primary tools for building a marriage that not only endures, but thrives to the glory of God. So these tools must begin with the foundation of prayer and the Word of God. Nothing we do in marriage will have lasting power unless it is rooted in a deep connection with God. Prayer anchors us in dependence on Him, and Scripture guides us in understanding His design for marriage and relationships. Without these, we are simply relying on human effort, which will ultimately fall short. So the tools I'm about to share are categorized into 3 essential areas: foundational, emotional, and relational. What are the foundational tools? Number 1, leaving, cleaving, and releasing. The first 2 are for the husband, but it applies to the couple in general. And the third one, releasing, is for the parents of the couple who are their adult married children. Many couples struggle because they don't have the right priorities in marriage. Healthy marriages learn to choose one another above all others. The role of your parents, in-laws, siblings, and friends all shift the moment you say, I do. Because when you join together as one, you have chosen to put your spouse over others. Parents of married adult children, one of the greatest acts of love you can show your children is to release them. The Lord has ordained that they leave their father and mother and cleave to their spouse. I am a mother and I see my need for growth as my children step into their adulthood and marriage. Avoid holding on to them as though they were still yours to guide day by day. Their covenant now is with their spouse before God. Avoid clinging to them emotionally or trying to direct their lives as though nothing has changed. Instead, support them, but do so in ways that are invited, not imposed. Your wisdom is a gift, but it's most powerful when offered with humility and not control. Pray for them. There's no greater influence you can have in their lives than to regularly and faithfully lift them up before God. Pray for their marriage to grow, their love for Christ to deepen, and their witness to flourish. Finally, honor your role as parents. It is shifted, but it's no less significant. Be a source of encouragement, joy, and wisdom. Remember, God's purposes for their lives are far greater than anything you could orchestrate. The second foundational tool for a resilient marriage is communication. Divorce doesn't happen overnight. It's more like a dead log slowly drifting away in the current gradually. And at the heart of this drifting is often a lack of communication, a disconnection between 2 people who were meant to be deeply intertwined. You won't agree on everything, but stonewalling or withdrawing only creates walls and not connection. Instead, express your needs with respect and kindness. Listen deeply, speak thoughtfully, and remember that the goal is not to win, but to strengthen your bond. The third foundational tool is trust. Trust in God, trust in yourself, and trust in your spouse. We know what is the meaning of trusting in God. He is sovereign over your marriage, faithful to keep His promises, and working all things for your good and His glory. Trusting Him means resting in His wisdom, even when circumstances feel uncertain or difficult. Second, trust in yourself, not in a self-sufficient way, but in the confidence that you are an image bearer of God, equipped by His Spirit to love and serve your spouse well. Trust that His grace is sufficient for your shortcomings. And finally, trust in your spouse. Choose to believe the best about them, even when it is easier to assume the worst. Assume the best. Extend grace, just as you have received it from Christ. Trust isn't blind. It is a decision to cultivate openness, to forgive, and to stand firm in your commitment. The fourth foundational tool is honesty. It is foundational to every healthy relationship. But as believers, we are called to a particular kind of honesty, speaking the truth with grace. Truth without grace can wound, and grace without truth can withhold what is needed for growth. We are called to hold both together. The fifth foundational tool is wholeness. Here's the thing. A marriage isn't about two half-full people coming together to complete each other. If you are half full and your spouse is half full, you don't end up whole. You end up with two half empty people. You know why? When individuals come into a marriage expecting their partner to complete them, they're relying on someone else to fill that emotional, spiritual, or personal gaps in their lives. Problem is, no human being is designed to bear the full weight of another person's needs. This creates strain on both partners. Instead of complementing each other, both end up feeling depleted. Hence, two half-empty people. Wholeness means being able to stand on your own, knowing what your identity and fulfillment ultimately come from Christ, not your spouse. When you are secure in Him, you're free to love your spouse without placing the weight of your wholeness on their shoulders. The second set of tools is emotional, and at the top of that list is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is critical for a healthy marriage. What is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to understand, manage, and express your own emotions while also being able to understand and influence the emotions of others. So many marriages struggle or even fall apart because of a desire for control, which often stems from narcissistic tendencies. Narcissism makes it hard to see past ourselves. And without self-awareness, we can become blind to the ways our actions and emotions impact our spouse. But here's the good news. Self-awareness is something we can grow in. Through prayer and the help of mental health professionals, we can address unhealthy patterns and break free from the grip of control or narcissism. God has given us the resources to examine our hearts, seek His wisdom, and pursue emotional health that strengthens our marriages. Number 2, forgiveness. It is essential to any thriving marriage, and it begins with a twofold challenge. Forgive yourself and forgive your spouse. What is forgiving yourself means? It means letting go of the shame and guilt that weigh you down. God's grace is big enough to cover your failures, and His mercy invites you to move forward in freedom. When you accept His forgiveness, you're better equipped to extend it to others. Forgiving your spouse is just as crucial. It's not about ignoring the hurt or pretending it didn't happen. It is about choosing healing over resentment. Forgiveness says, I won't let this wound define us. I'm releasing you from the debt because Christ has released it from mine. Third tool under the emotional toolbox, humility. It is a cornerstone of a healthy marriage. It begins with acknowledging both your flaws and your strengths. Humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means thinking of yourself rightly, as someone in need of grace, yet gifted by God for good. It also means taking responsibility for your mistakes. When you admit, I was wrong, you create space for trust, healing, and growth. Humility compels us to pursue self-improvement, not to earn love, but to become more like Christ in the way we love. Working on yourself with God's help is one of the greatest gifts you can give your marriage. The fourth one, counseling. Let's talk about it. When mental health or behavioral challenges come up in a marriage, seeking counseling isn't a sign of weakness. It is a step of courage and wisdom. Sometimes we need someone with the tools and perspective to help us work through the hard stuff. A good counselor can be a gift, offering guidance and practical steps toward healing. Remember, God often uses these resources to bring restoration and growth in ways we couldn't manage on our own. The last set of tools, it is relational. One of the key ones is stress management. Life is full of stressors, and we know that. Work, finances, family. But the key is to face them as a team. Share your stress with your spouse rather than carrying it alone. Working together through those challenges, and it builds connection and trust. Here is something powerful. Pray together. When couples hear each other praying for them, it creates a special connection. It is rooted in vulnerability, love, and faith. It reminds you both that God is in control and that you are committed to seeking His guidance together. The second one, healthy boundaries. Setting boundaries and limits around your marriage shouldn't be something you do reactively, like after something bad happens. It should be something you do proactively before something bad happens. What are you doing to protect your marriage? How are you being deliberate and intentional on a daily basis to guard the love that you have? Start by defining your limits. Know where you need to say yes and where to say no. Boundaries guard against harmful influences that can chip away at your relationship, whether those come from outside pressures or unhealthy habits. Respect each other's space. It is okay to need time apart sometimes. It actually makes your time together even richer. And let's talk about technology. Set some boundaries with screens so you are not distracted when your spouse needs your attention. Put down that phone. Most of all, protect your time together. Be intentional about carving out moments to connect, even in the middle of life's busyness. Number 3, selflessness. Selflessness is such a game changer in marriage. It is about mutual giving, both of you choosing to put the other's needs first. It's those little moments of saying yes to each other, even when it's not the most convenient thing, because love isn't about keeping score. Let's not forget repentance. We all mess up, and selflessness means being quick to own it and say, I am sorry. That simple act opens the door for grace and brings you closer together. The fourth one, education and skill building. They are so important for a thriving marriage. Think of it this way. We invest time and effort into learning new skills for work or hobbies. Why wouldn't we do the same for our most important relationship? Attend couples workshops like this one or seminars where you can grow together and learn from others. Read books on marriage as a team. Make it a shared experience. Marriage isn't something you master once. It is something you keep learning. When you invest in building skills together, you're building a stronger foundation for years to come. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second. We haven't talked about love at all. Shouldn't that have been foundational? But here's what I want you to know. Everything we have talked about, every tool we covered here is love. It is love in action. Love isn't just a feeling or a noun. It is a verb. It is something we choose to do day in and day out. When you communicate well, set boundaries, forgive, and grow in selflessness, you're showing love in tangible, practical ways. That's the kind of love that builds a marriage. Let's wrap up here. Marriage requires 2 peacemakers, not just peacekeepers. Peacekeepers avoid conflict. but peacemakers lean in. They work through the hard things to build something stronger. That is the kind of resilience every marriage needs. Marriage is a gift, but it's a gift that comes with responsibility. It's not just about happiness. It is about building a partnership that can weather the storms and reflect the love of Christ. And here's a truth we can't overlook. Until Jesus is enough for you, no person or thing ever will be. Stand whole in Him first, so you can bring your best self to your marriage. Forgiveness isn't a finish line you cross. It's a daily choice. And so are love, joy, peace, and self-control. These are the fruits of the Spirit, and they shape the way we approach our spouse every single day. Working on your marriage doesn't mean something is broken. It means you care about your marriage deeply. It means you're invested in seeing it flourish. Growth is a sign of love and a commitment to the beauty God designed marriage to hold. And let me ask you this. Have you prayed for your marriage yet? Prayer isn't a last resort. It is your first and greatest tool. When you invite God into your marriage, He brings the strength, the grace, and the peace that you can't create on your own. Thank you so much for listening and for your time. It's been a joy to share with you today. God bless.